Then we have the bill in the Senate. Introducing the bill. Bills are introduced by senators, and like the House, they are given a number, title, read, and are referred to a committee.
Rules for debate. The House and Senate differ in that in the House is more strict about debate on the floor, while the Senate is more open and senators are able to speak when they want. For consideration of bills, chamber votes at an agreed time set by the floor leaders. Senate has a two-speech rule. It states that no one can speak more than twice on a single question.
The filibuster. Filibuster is an attempt to talk a bill to death. Used to delay or prevent action on a measure, usually by using motions, quorum calls, and other maneuvers. There have been incidents where senators talk about irrelevant topics just to waste time. Example was Strom Thurmond talked for 24 hours in an attempt to delay what is now known as the Civil Rights Act of 1957.
So all it is just talking and talking about irrelevant things. Like there were some that were even talking about fishing and cooking, just to kind of,
Just to talk it down.
Yeah.
Because eventually they're hoping the other side will say, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Forget it. If you're going to take up all this time, let's move on.
Yeah.
In fact, Strom Thurmond and some of those southern politicians actually brought in cots into their office in the Capitol building, and they would take turns rolling in because they had to be on the floor. The minute they left the floor, they'd lose their position. So they actually, these guys from the South who didn't want these civil rights legislation they would take time, and then they would yield to each other and to nobody else. And this went on for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, this one lasted for 24 hours, so.
The new presidential candidate did that for 13 years.
And there's the, I think it's the cloture rule. The cloture rule was established because of a filibuster that had lasted 3 weeks in 1917. There was an incident weeks before we entered World War I where President Wilson had asked Congress to arm American merchant vessels. The bill became very popular throughout the country and passed with a vote of 403 to 12, but eventually died because 12 senators had filibustered. Now we're going to switch iPads real quick.
Mister, what's a word for this?
Simultaneous?
The cloture rule continued. This rule is not regularly used, but called by special procedure. It calls for cloture or limiting debate. The rule can be invoked 2 days after a petition calling for that action has been made by at least 16 members of the Senate. However, if 3/5 of the full Senate votes in favor of the motion, then the rule becomes effective. After this, no more than 30 hours of floor time is allowed to be spent on the measure and must be brought to a final vote.
So can you contrast the complete liberality that exists in the Senate versus the House of Representatives, where the Speaker can shut things down?
Cloture rule invoking. Many senators hesitate to support these motions because 1, the Senate's tradition of free debate, and 2, the worry that frequent use of the cloture rule will take away from the power of filibuster when they want to use it.
There's conference committees. After surviving through committees and rules on the floor of both houses, there are still important steps in the legislative process before it becomes a law. Bills must be passed by both houses in identical form. When the House or Senate will not accept the other's version of a bill, conference committees are formed temporarily to reach a compromise. These members, or managers, of the conference committee are made up of leading members in which took place in the relating standing committee. The committee strictly focuses on the points of disagreements within the bill, and no new material can be introduced in the compromise version. However, changes can be made that were not considered in either house.
Conference committees continued. Once the compromise bill is completed, it is submitted to both houses with only options of being either accepted or rejected. Either house rarely turns down this compromise because, one, the powerful membership of the typical conference committee, and the fact that its report comes in the middle of a rush to adjournment at the end of congressional session.
In other words, they want to go
They want to hurry up, get it over with.
go home, right?
Yep.
President acts. Once a bill reaches the president, he has 4 options. 1, the president may sign the bill, and then it becomes a law. 2, he may veto it, or refuse to sign the bill. In this case, the president's objections are taken and sent back to the House in which it originated. From here, Congress may pass the bill over the president's veto by a 2/3 vote of the members of each house. 3, he may allow the bill to become a law without signing it within 10 days of receiving it, not counting Sundays. And 4 is the pocket veto. If Congress adjourns in its sessions within 10 days of submitting a bill to a president and he does not act, the bill dies.
Some people say, well, what's the big deal about that? That number 4 is really significant, that pocket veto, because oftentimes bills, as you know, very few ever make it this far. And those that do, oftentimes are passed at the last minute. So if they are passed within that 10-day window, at the very end, the president, if he doesn't want to, deal with it, all he has to do is ignore it.
Yep.
And he doesn't take any, heat. I didn't have to veto it. I didn't have to sign it.
And additional veto power. Congress granted additional power in the Line Item Veto Act of 1996.
Yeah.
And this gave the president the power to reject individual items in appropriation bills. And that concludes section 4.